Okay, what's been the pattern of late is for me to do a scene, and if it's a larger scene, then I'll take my time to do it, and then I'll do kind of a quick scene version of that scene. In this case, I'm not going quick, I'm going actually twice as large as my previous two scenes. I really love these types of scenes with sky figures and a bunch of kind of silhouette, foliage types of imagery in the front of it, or I don't know, in the foreground. And I thought I would go with one more, but I wanted to do it big. I really like this type of scene. So let's change it up though. I went with kind of a purple and green tone scene. A couple color schemes that I really like, but let's warm this one up, okay? And what I'm using is a combination of colors that I have come to like over the years, and that's kind of these browns, pinks, but then we'll work in a lot of yellows and ochres and kind of a warm tinge to it. I never really know exactly what's going to come out, but we'll see as far as this combination goes, okay? Brown has some pink in it, right? Because brown is a combination of what, there's like some reds and yellows and I don't know, I forget what other combination from the primaries, but they do go together rather well, okay? Now this is using the Milky Way Large. I'm just going to be using primarily the same images that I've used in the previous two videos, if you happen to be watching some of these in sequence. Excuse me. So each time I'll do this. Now you don't have to do this little kind of additional spot coloring like this. I'm just kind of going over some of these stars in here with a Marvy brush marker. It's a big fat tip, and it cleans up rather well. I just do a couple little scribbles like that after I do that. Here's one thing about the Milky Way stamp. You see that kind of I don't know, star trail or whatever right here. I just kind of match that up with this one right here. You can tilt it this way, tilt it that way, whatever you want it to go, but that's what I usually do. And it just will give the appearance of this kind of continuing down this way. And I think I am going to go for a fairly distinct, I don't know, trail of stars, I don't know, other path of stars, whatever, kind of going from here to here. Before, I don't know, on these other scenes, I could change it too, but I didn't really think about which way's up and which way's down at all, when first starting off those scenes, because it really doesn't matter. But I think this one, I'm going to do this kind of elongated scene with the foliage in mind of what will eventually happen in there, okay? Alright, so we can add more of these wherever you want it to go. I'm going to incorporate a couple other images into this one because some people saw those previous two scenes and they liked, probably, I'm assuming they liked what they saw. So some people have been ordering things like other types of images. Okay, now that Milky Way was one of them. So I'll go in here with my star cluster. Okay, now all of the sky images are interchangeable. They're blendable. Okay, so you don't have to kind of just go with one or the other. You can use them in combination with one another. Okay, so Starbirth right here, it just has a kind of a different patterning, but watch what I'm going to do. You don't try to add this, right in these spaces right here, like where, rectangle meets rectangle. You certainly could, but you do a little bit more blending in like this, okay, and overlapping. Okay, so I'll just take this, and see, I'm going to go, like, right through here. So we're talking about, a good inch, I don't know, half an inch to an inch, just blending in and just covering up like that, okay? And do you see how that just kind of merges in like that? So a lot of people, I don't know, I guess I always say this, it's understandable where people would think that this kind of compositional building with these types of images is harder to do than some kind of outline image where you do all this kind of masking and all that type of stuff. But it's just because they're not comfortable with overlapping and blending things over, like going 1 inch into a, another design or something like that. Now this one right here, I'm going to go into this one, and I'm going to go into this one, okay? Like something like this. Okay. So you can see, I mean, right here, I mean, it doesn't look like that's going to blend in very well, but I don't know, can you see this, where one overlaps the other? Hopefully you can't. I can't see it, and I'm right here in front of it, and, Alright, so here's some more of that. I'm laughing because that's one of my kind of frustrations, is that sometimes people think, oh my god, it's so much harder, but how much harder is this to do, than traditional stamping? One thing that's hard, though, I'll give you this, is it is really hard to tell with this type of stamping where one image begins and the other one ends, or something like that. So it's confusing from that point of view. When people see compositions built up of several different images, and they can say, okay, well, there's one stamp, there's another stamp, and there's a stamp. From that perspective, it seems easier to do, but when you have a lot of distinctive separate shapes, that requires a lot of additional forms or techniques if you blend them together. Okay, meaning you have to mask over things so you don't have kind of linear images overlapping into other linear images. Where these ones are, these ones are tonal, so they're made up of a lot of dots, and the transitions are the important things, is how many dots are out on the perimeter like this that allow us to go in and to overlap without that edge being too distinct, okay, for where one thing ends and the other one begins. That's my job as a designer, to kind of get that ratio and a combination of dots out there on the perimeter. Not too light, because if I go too light on the outside, those dots, when someone stamps it, become much bigger because there's not a lot of support around them, so you get these gigantic dots on the outside, and imagery doesn't blend well. And but just enough to where it doesn't look so solid, where you stamp out a bunch of things and it's a bunch of rectangles in space. Okay, now this one I'm using a bit of ochre in here too, so this is the star nebula. But see, all of this different sky imagery, you can just kind of mix and match and whatnot. Let's go like this. Let's go into the Milky Way and Starbirth, right? I don't know, do I want to go that way? Let's see. Maybe go. It's like, where do you want it? No, let's go right here. Let me fill in this space right here. The nebula is a pretty explosive type of image right there, so maybe I won't go too much with that one. Maybe it'll be more of a general thing. I'm not sure. I mean, we can go with anything. There's going to be a lot of overlapping in here with color too, so we have a lot of that to go. All right, now this is the star cluster. Someone picked up this along with a lot of these other images, so I'm going to show them how to use that if they, I don't know, if they watch the video. Okay, so I just did that little thing. See those little stars down there? I just kind of went over the whole thing with dark brown, and then right around those 3 points, I brought in that kind of that pinkish, or actually that is pink. But you just kind of overlap in there like so, okay? It's looking very celestial right now, of course. Let's go down like this, and I'm overlapping and overlapping. Okay, I'm not even gonna bother with this one right here. in terms of coloring that pink, because I know kind of my perimeter is going to get fairly dark. And see this right here? See this now? It's just like boom, boom, down, down, you know? It's just really just kind of going in there and, you know, it's not really being careful at all. I'm being careful not to go into something else, you know, 4 inches or something like that. But there's plenty of leeway, you know. It's about, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch to an inch, you know. So there's a big, you know, space in there. What you do, you can overlap by 1/8 of an inch, you know, something like that. And that way you don't have all these spaces in between everything. Now, I know this is looking crazy right now, but let's just keep building on here, and then we'll bring in all of our tone into that, and that's when it really starts to come together. Clad cumulus. Okay, now I was showing people how to do this in previous videos. You just kind of wipe off that surrounding area. The stars are going to be in here, so when I stamp my clouds over here, they're going to be pointed up this way, so that they're being illuminated by those stars, right? But what if I put the cloud over here? If I do it this way, it's being toplit, right? So let's do this and have it being lit by those same stars going this way, okay? So I'll show you what I do here. Okay. I would say that's about a 1/2 inch overlap into this previous. Change your angle slightly and overlap your previous one too. See that? Now let me show you what it looks like without doing any wiping of this cloud, where it blends into the other ones, okay? You can still do that. It's not really any too big of a deal. It's maybe a slightly less refined. I don't know. I can barely tell any difference at all. But look at how that really blends in with that other area there. Look, this is going to be quite a tapestry of stars up there, okay? See this right here? Just blending it in, kind of giving nice equal pressure in this, but most of the times I'm pressing the center. I'm not rocking this back and forth or anything like that. And it's all blended in, okay? And people say, yeah, you make it look so easy. Well, it is. You just have to not be too careful. You know? It's when people are way too careful and they're doing, you know, feeling so precarious, or, you know, smashing their stamps down or something like that, that it becomes a little bit more, yeah, kind of, you know, see, I can even overlap. I thought I might, I got the, there was some ink on this and I set it there, so it gave me that little lid thing. But look at this. What do you do in scenic stamping? You just stamp right over it, right? And then you color over it too, so I'll put some additional color over it. But I might want some additional forms, so cloud forms. I really like that kind of soft texture like that, so you can put some additional forms up there like that, billowy forms. Okay. Alright, man, that is looking... I don't know if I've ever done a scene, kind of that star scene like this big. I hardly ever work full page, but we just started doing that. I don't know, when were those full page scenes that I did? About a month ago or something like that? Anyways, I don't fear the full page anymore after that. I don't know, I'm just joking, I didn't really fear them, but they did take a long time. But this type of scene right here, where it's just kind of this, you know, vast, you know, sea of texture in the background, that really allows you to just apply tone wherever, practically. It's either practically or literally. Alright, I have yellow on this, okay? It's just the yellow re-inker from Marvy. I just want a ton of tone on here. I really want this to really stand out. Now, one of the people that saw kind of the finished piece just posted online said, what did you do to get the lighter areas of your scene, right? Some areas around some stars were lighter. They thought it was a subtractive process, you know, going in and kind of removing some color, right? And that's what everyone always thinks, you know, when you see a piece of paper that's just so dark and there's some lighter things in it. You know, the thought generally is that you did some kind of subtractive process to remove color to reveal a lighter tone. But, you know, lighter tones for me, I mean, you could probably do some kind of bleaching process or something like that, or, you know, color removal. But why do that when you can just retain areas of lightness just by not darkening it out, okay? So adding some of this down like this. If you want some areas to remain nice and light, then just kind of go around them and don't tone them all out, or don't use as much ink on them, okay? I don't know if I want stark white on this anywhere, so I'm getting a kind of a light shade of some of this yellow on some areas. All right, now some of these clouds I think will look good, you know, remaining fairly light, okay? Now one of the things is I inked up my applicator tip, my stylus tool tip here, with, you know, pretty good sopping, you know, saturation of ink. I've applied a ton of it here. You can see a lot of it right here, right? That's, you know, quite a bit of ink there. That's, you know, 3 or 4 drops probably. But 3 or 4 drops go, you know, a pretty long way. Okay, so see, what I do keep doing is I just keep extending it a little bit. So I'm leaving some areas light where you do that. It doesn't really matter, just so long as you leave some. I tend to think that, you know, the stars, the bigger stars, are a pretty good opportunity for, you know, some kind of light source in a scene, so I'm leaving some of them light, but some of them, you know, I just completely darkened up, so it's all up to you. If you accidentally go over some in this one, it's not going to matter. Nighttime skies are really, really forgiving. Now, see, if I had something like a single light source in a scene, like a sun or a moon, and you darken it out, you know, there's certain things you can do to kind of make it seem lighter by making the area around it darker, but, you know, if you made it go really dark, there's really not much you can do. You know, you can play contrasts against one another, but, you know, you can't really remove, like, say, dye-based inks. You can lighten it up with some pigment inks or something like that over the top of it, but, you know, just in general, just try to retain the certain areas that you want. Okay, now I'm getting really dry on here. Let's see if I can get a little bit more ink that yeah, okay. I thought there was less ink in that little tray there than there was. Just a tiny little bit really goes a long way here. Or can go a long way. Okay, now here's one of the things, here's my trick here, okay? And I say this in all the videos, but if someone's kind of new to this technique right here, and when I say technique, it's just this inking technique. It's not scenic stamping techniques or anything like that. I can do this scene in some other type of media. So I'm just talking about this technique right here of really getting a lot of saturated tones down here. One of the things that I do is I use a lot more ink than probably someone would think, okay? So that's a pretty decent amount right there, right? And it's not just about coloring it in. That's half of it. Or I don't know, maybe 2/3. The other part of it is saturation. It's going for a really deep saturation of a given color. And when you do that across several different colors that you're going to be using, you get this kind of deeper intensity. All right. Now, I don't even know what colors were on here, but they look like they're still wet. So I'm just going to use them. I have no idea what they are at this point in time. They've just been sitting on my desk here for probably weeks, because I don't remember when the last kind of warm tone scene that I did was. I don't know what color that was. It looks like... I don't know if it was more yellow. I don't remember using yellow, though. This is like some kind of orange here. All right, let's take a look at that. Oh, this is probably, it might have been one of my Memento inks or Distress Ink. I'm not quite sure. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be kind of going through some warm tones like oranges, pinks, browns, and whatnot in this scene. Alright. Okay, now scenes for me kind of go through this period of kind of visual uncertainty. There's no other way to put it I don't know. That's the best way to put it, you know. Or you can use other words and whatnot, but like this one right here, I just don't know what this is going to look like at this point in time. They tend to look a little bit weird at times during the process if you're doing so many different layers of colors here. Okay, so here's what I'll do. Alright, now you can do this with whatever pads you have. Maybe I'll try to use some Mementos and things like that, some of the pads that you might have. A lot of people don't have Marvies. So I'll just grab out some examples of some different colors that we'll use in here, or we can use in here. And it's really wide open. There's so many different kind of ways you can go. So see brown and, you know, warm tones like that. And I'm sure a lot of you have distress inks, right? Some of you have like the entire collection at times. Here's a walnut stain. I happen to have a ground espresso here that I picked up recently. Here's antique linen. Love that one. Did I pick up any brownish tinge Memento inks? I don't know if I did. I picked up a lot of cool tones here. Alright, so let's not go with this one. That one's too light. We won't be able to see it at all. Oh, here's a mustard seed. That's another yellow. We can kind of incorporate that into the mix, maybe. Alright, but do you see what I'm doing here? This is just going through this process of grabbing out some colors out of the color scheme that you have in mind. And I'm just going to roughly, you know, arrange these from kind of light to dark. Okay? Or it could be a little bit dull to bright as well, but mostly light to dark. Okay, now I had a little bit of a darker color on here still from whatever color was in my palette here, but let's just go back to this mustard seed and let's see if that does anything here. I think it does. Look at this right here. See that? Do you see the subtle difference between this and this right here? Well, this is the mustard seed over the top of that yellow right here. Let's use some more of this in here. Okay, so see that little subtle thing? Okay, those changes like that. That's the thing right there. When you do this, the cumulative kind of effect of bringing in some of those additional tones, okay? It's like those intermediate colors. Okay, now watch out that you don't tone everything out, and this is where, you know, sometimes I might lose some of my light sources in here because I color them out. I'm really careful with my first colors or something like that, then I get into a darker color, and oh, I went over all my things that I wanted to remain light, okay? But see this right here? This really kind of adds this beautiful layering in here. Look at that kind of glow that's starting to happen. When you use, in color theory or whatever, or the, I don't know, theory or the principles of color, visually, when you bring in analogous colors and put them next to each other, it creates a color glow. Okay, so that would be like colors on the color wheel. A yellow next to an orange, or an orange next to a red. When you put those side by side, that kind of, that meeting point visually would create a color glow. Well, we're kind of doing that type of thing, except we're just laying color over color over color over color. So kind of the end result becomes this kind of, this inner glow illusion, you know, because it's not actually glowing and, you know, coming from within there. We just kind of are creating the illusion of it through the use of layered colors, and then that reflected light, you know, kind of looks really deep and saturated and hopefully a little bit more three-dimensional than it truly is, which is, you know, just two-dimensional. Okay, so when I lay it down one color over the other one, Some of it might be actually physically mixing, but it's kind of like putting more of like a transparent layer of one color over another one, like color overlays like that. Okay, that's the concept at least. So if you want to make your colors or your surfaces, you can do this kind of in matte too. Matte's a little bit more absorbent, but I did something on matte recently, and that looks pretty good. I mean, like something like this. Now I need to spray this right here, okay? And it'll bring out the saturation and tone in here, but it's not too bad. It's more of a satin finish looking piece than glossy. But if you spray it with glossy, it'll look glossy. Okay, this is Potter's Clay. It doesn't look like that orange there, right? Okay, this is Potter's Clay right here. Let's do a little comparison side by side. Okay. I'm really trying to get a lot of ink down there, right there, okay? But look at the difference between this, okay? This color right here and this one. See, this is on matte paper too, but it looks rather flat, doesn't it? But you add it over the top of that yellow, and that yellow kind of creates that kind of foundational glow for that orangish tinge over the top of it. Alright, now I am working on a very large piece of paper, so this is one of the things, for me personally, I'm going to have to kind of consider, and that's, I want to use some of that Dr. Martens Bleed Proof White in that splatter painting technique, so I do want to go a little bit darker than what I normally do, which is kind of fun too. I can be a lot more haphazard with this, you know. Don't do that, though. But that's just to show you can. It's not this kind of precarious exercise of applying inks on here. Okay? But kind of just glazing in. Look at this. The darker I take the area around, kind of some lighter areas or objects, the lighter they seem by contrast, meaning they'll stand out a little bit more the darker you take the area around them. Okay. Okay, see those clouds right there? Just kind of stay away from them. If you want to come in there, you can come in here like that, but don't tone everything out. You got to be a little bit more careful when you get into your darker tones, you know, just because you are going on with a much darker tone. You know, I don't want to go like this, you know, with black or something like that, but you can do it with something like this. It's not really any big deal. I mean, what other type of stamping coloring can you do that, you know, type of thing with? Now, the bigger it is, you think, it's a little bit harder. Well, it's not harder, it just kind of takes more time because you have a lot more space to fill in, but when you have something this big, I mean, if you go like this, you know, these little areas, you know, don't stand out as much. The smaller the thing, if you do something, you know, you get some kind of mark in the middle of your scene like that, it would show up a lot more than something like this. But this is just so textured in the background. It eliminates a lot of the kind of the precariousness of certain types of stamping that you might run into and whatnot. Okay, or coloring maybe. All right, now this one's brown. This is one of my favorite colors, and that's the Marvy Brown. It saves me a lot of times, this brown here. Not in this scene right here, but kind of when I'm working with like greens, sunset colors, reds and whatnot. Those colors often become so vibrant and hot and super bright, where I want kind of something to just kind of mellow it all out and to tone it down a bit, and that's where this brown comes in. Okay, see that Milky Way kind of, you know, stars kind of kind of finding a pathway down this way. Okay, and this is kind of moving into the medium tones right now. It's not real dark or anything, right? But also this page is getting really wet, so even if I go like this with a squeeze of that, can you see that right there? You just kind of spread it out like that, right? So it's starting to kind of glow a little bit more. Not like glow in the dark, but I'm just talking about kind of, you know, there's a certain radiance to it, you know, and looking like, it'd be like, I don't know, like staining wood or something like that. And if you've ever done that, it's just this beautiful, probably you put that stain across it or something like that, or, you know, and you can see all the grains of the wood, and it looks just deeper and deeper. That's kind of what I'm, you know, the look or something that I'm kind of going for with this, and you can just call maybe the imagery or the grains or something like that. And these are like putting on kind of layers of glazes of stain one after another one, okay? And it tends to look a little bit deeper and deeper, and then if you spray it with a clear coat or something like that, it might look even more saturated and deep. Okay. All right, so I don't know how many people are going to be doing full page scenes, but I mean, this is a, you know, like a half page scene right there. This is a quarter page scene right there. I think any one of these little segments like that would make a really fantastic background. This one doesn't have as much contrast right there, but, you know, something like that. I mean, if you put trees around here or something like that, hey, that'd be a great, you know, piece right there. All right, boy. I tend to be using a lot of ink on these last three scenes, which I love. I really love. I love a scene that kind of gives me the opportunity for really deep saturations of tones. I think it looks really lush and whatnot. This right here is terracotta. Huh. It's almost like the naming convention for that other one, potter's clay, huh? The memento. But anything, you know, any kind of color. You don't have to go for these specific colors. I'm sure you have like some reds or something like that, like a Christmas red in your collection. Grab those out and just kind of put them right in front of you and kind of see that you have a selection to choose from. And kind of the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the rate or the process, but you have the I don't know, the lineup from light to dark that you can see visually that you're going to work through. Okay, so that's why I always kind of recommend kind of pulling them out and just putting them right in front of you, because you can see which ones are lighter and which ones are darker, and just kind of work from light to dark. When you work that way, like this, and you're just kind of taking an incremental step in terms of the darkness, it makes it easier to blend in, and also, one of the biggest things is just kind of working light to dark is I don't have to clean this. You know, I'm not going with the dark brown first, then going back to yellow. Right? You know, I don't want to tap, you know, a dark brown into a yellow pad or something. So it just makes it really easy in terms of a process right here. What have we used? With 5 or 6 colors, maybe. I don't know if it was more, but and I'm just using the same tip right here through that entire time. All right, so I really like this kind of this orange in here right now. I think it looks pretty good. Sometimes you go through several different colors and it doesn't change too much, and then sometimes you hit some color and it just seems to all kind of start coming together even more so, kind of in an expedited kind of fashion. All right, let's see this ground espresso right here. Let's see if I like this color. I certainly like the name. Isn't that cool? And it's a distress ink. Let's see. It looks pretty dark in terms of the value. The hue looks really dark too. Okay, now I need to be a little bit careful about this. Let's see. Alright, it is pretty dark. See that right there? But it's because it's kind of piled up. I'll just kind of, you know, blend it around a little bit. I think it's going to be easier if I have a little bit less ink on here. Okay, so now I just kind of swept it. Okay, let me show you what it looks like right here. I kind of want this top area to be pretty dark anyway, because I want it to kind of frame it, but look how dark that is. It's like shoe polish or something. So you can just kind of blend it out like this, or whatever. Use whatever kind of stroke or whatever that you want. I'm just going and taking it with a very light touch. It's almost like, you know, like skating across ice. This, you know, this paper, glossy paper, is really smooth. Okay, see, this is kind of closing things off a little bit, but as dark as that is, you can still see, you know, the forms underneath it. Now, if I press hard on this, it's going to squeeze some ink out, so if I need to do that, I will. So sometimes I'll tap to get a little bit of ink out, and then I'll just kind of spread it around like so. See that? When you get a little puddle, it really makes it easy to kind of spread around. Some of my page area is getting fairly dry, even with all those inks that I put on, but it is 90 degrees out, you know, where I am right now, so it's really rather humid, but it's going to dry a little bit faster. If you're in Utah, you know, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, whatever, or at high elevation or something like that, you're probably going to have to work a little bit faster, but you know that. Okay, look at that. Alright, hey, that ground espresso, I'm a big fan. I think what that did, that ground espresso, I was going to go back in with this dark brown that I stamped everything out in, but I don't think I need to do that because I think this dark brown is lighter than this espresso. So that worked great. Now, I need to keep this in mind. Don't put as much ink out there if I'm working on a smaller piece of paper, like a quarter-size, standard card size image, because that dark brown espresso really goes a long way. Look at that. It's a little bit hard to control because it's just so dark, you know, but you just kind of spread it around like so. Use a light touch, okay? It's like sweeping, okay? Let's sweep some of that color on here, okay, and really blend it in. The paper is, like I said, it's drying a little bit, but it's not completely dry to the touch or anything like that, so it's giving me some time to really manipulate it and move it around on the paper, on the surface. I've never, I've never splatter painted. Or did I? I was going to say such a large area. Well, if I did on another scene, it was kind of in a given area, not over the whole thing. Like this one is going to be. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Alright. Look at that ground espresso. That really... that really developed the value range, that's for sure. The value range meaning darkness. It brought in that deep, dark kind of a hue into the piece. Let's play around with something, okay? Let's go into a couple kind of magenta and violet values. Oh, maybe I should use that pink as well. Alright, I'm gonna have to switch tips here, but let's go with some of this. We used this in the pen form on that imagery, okay? So, it would stand to reason that, you know, we can use that same color right there. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. Okay, let's use it in some of the darker areas right here. Let's see if we can see it. Okay, now you wouldn't think using kind of a lighter pink over this really dark area would do anything, but let's test it out. Okay, see this right here? Yeah, I'll do a compare contrast right here. Do you see the difference between that and like that? It looks different, doesn't it? Look how rich that looks in comparison to that. So, I mean, that being said, we can bring this over here and add this right into it. It's not going to make it lighter pink. Remember, these are transparent colors, but look at that richness right there. Now, if I just, you know, laid that down, you wouldn't be able to tell, but that little comparison contrast now. Now we have this tone right there. And see, that's it over there without it. I mean, you don't have to have it everywhere. You can have a kind of a range of intensity. So here's this pink over the top of brown here, and here's this pink over or brown over here, sans pink. See some of these areas in here? I think we can go for a little bit more of an interesting look, maybe. Let's take this area right in here that looks, in terms of the color, fairly monotonous. Okay, let's bring in a little bit intensity here. Let's not put it everywhere. Let's just lay some of it down like that. Look at that glow right there. Right, see that intensity right there? But why not just leave it like that, not put it everywhere, okay, so that we have a little bit of variation right there. But look at that's pink over the top of that, okay? Let's bring some of this into this little area, maybe. Okay, this is a demonstration for me, but it's also kind of discovery, because I don't know exactly what it's going to look like either. I'm just kind of, you know, doing some experimentation here. So I'm seeing stuff that I know. I mean, I know in general how it might look, okay? I just tone that out, right? I don't like that right there now, but I thought that nebula was looking a little bit too light anyway. Okay. That's too much, but so we'll bring something into that, but okay, let's lay some more of this down. I'm kind of adjusting here and there. That area looks really ugly now, but don't worry. Or you can worry and let me kind of figure it out. But we'll put something over there. Okay, so that pink is, you know, quite a nice contributor, I think, to this overall right here. Adding it here and there. I love it though, so I'm kind of adding it, quite a lot of it down. Okay. That is that. Thank you, pink. That was the number 9 Marby pink. This is a magenta right here. It's the number 20. I used it on a violet tone scene. I was thinking, what is that? I just got a drop of some ink right there. I thought it was a hole in the scene. I think I had some re-inker fluid or something like that down there. Anyway. Okay, here we go. Oh! I just cleaned these off so it just drips some tone down there. Okay, anyway. This is magenta. Magenta. The Marvy magenta is like uber bright. Not the taxi service, but the adjective. Alright. I don't use magenta too often, so it's always kind of interesting to see what that's going to look like in a given area. I usually use it for my kind of sunset scenes, you know, but then I have to be really kind of careful with it, otherwise, you know, it'll look like, I don't know, like an electric sunset scene or something like that. It's just so bright. Look at that there. Boy, that looks pretty crazy. Okay, violet. I didn't expect to be going into this kind of violet tinge here. I expected it to be more kind of earthy brown, which I'll go back into, but let's add some of this around on the perimeter. This is one of the darker, just straight hues, you know, without going to something like a black. I used to use, and someone reminded me of this, I don't know, a year ago or two, when I went to a convention. She said, "Are you still doing that thing with purple and green or something like that?" I used, before pads were out there, everyone used Marvy pens, because, you know, that was the thing to color stamps with. There were no kind of pads for the, you know, the craft market. And the Marvy Black at the time, which was one of the blackest blacks, just, I don't know, for some reason it wasn't black enough. The pad form seems to be darker, but the pen form, it was more like a 90% gray or less, maybe. But I can get a darker hue mixing this violet right here with bottle green, and the two of them formed a really beautiful, almost black value, which is the thing that I stamped out a lot of my images in, so a little bit of extra work, but it was worth it back then. Okay, so we have all that going right now. I don't know if I want to use any more of that espresso. I think that might be enough. Okay, so let me go back to, now I did this little trick here on the previous video using the cloud stamp. Right up here, I mean, I have some pretty good variation. Look at that deep space imagery in there. See down here, I've retained a lot of my cloud formations and whatnot, but right up here, it gets a little bit boring for me. So let's go back to the cloud stamp and just insert that back in there, but we'll stamp it in a darker shade or a darker value than we initially did with that dark brown, okay? So if you just can't see it anymore, and if you do want some of that shape in there, or some of that texture, then just stamp it in a darker value and see if you can see it. Okay, so wiping off a little bit of this. Light is coming from within there, so I'm pointing this in towards light. It's not going to give me a light cloud in here. I'll just see a dark cloud, but we'll see if we can see it at all, just to form a little bit of extra depth with the use of darker imagery in the foreground here. Okay, you see that right there? Right. So see, there it is right there. And I'll put a few more right in here. Okay, I didn't even wipe that one off. I don't know if I need to. It's just so dark in there anyway. Now this one where it gets close to that nebula, maybe I will blot this off a touch. Okay, I just stamped over a star. So a casualty of the process right there. Okay, so see, I just wanted more clouds right there. But look at that. Okay, now I can't see some of the clouds out here. See that one, the dark brown one? So let's stamp a black one over here, kind of in the darker area. Darker things usually represent things that are a little bit closer to us, so you can do dark clouds and light clouds. The lighter clouds look like they're a little bit, you know, farther back. Darker ones seem like they're a little bit closer to us. So you can play values against one another like that for the sake of depth. Okay, see that right there? It's a little bit subtle because it's really dark in there, but we can see it now, you know, where we couldn't see it before at all. When that dries too, it's going to be even more subtle, so let me try to go for another impression right here in black. I can see a tiny little bit of that stamp right there, see that? But anyways, this is hopefully adding up to a lot of depth within the scene. Okay, so gosh, that is crazy. It's crazy layered. All right, now this is black. I'm going to put a little bit more of a vignette around the surrounding area. I'm going to be using some really dark imagery on here, still yet to come, in the form of some trees and whatnot. So I don't want it so bottom heavy. They're going to be coming in from the bottom and maybe the side a little bit. So I want to get some of this same value black around on the perimeter just to kind of hold everything together a little bit more. It kind of ties it in and contains the composition by framing it off here a little bit. This is called extreme, or what I would call extreme layering, okay? If I was just doing a quarter page with the same color scheme right here, I probably would have been done in about 20 minutes or something like that. With the entire card, with all the, not just with the layering of colors and stuff, I'm talking about with the stamping and little embellishments and whatnot. So we'll do that in a quick scene on the next video. Alright. I think that's it for that Marvy Black, but look at that Marvy Black, look at that depth right here. So it doesn't look like it's kind of glowing right there. It's not, because we don't have a light coming from behind the scene, but look at the little pink and things like that in there. There's my big smear right there with that thing. I'll have to stamp something over it, a branch. Okay. So, here we go. This is the little kid in me, part that the little kid in me has been waiting for. Alright, let's clear out some space here because we're going to be having some fun here. Okay, so for all those colors right there, I just used 2 tips right here. It was just this tip right here and this tip. So 2 tips for all those colors right there. I'm going to have to wash them now, but it doesn't require a lot. Okay, so Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. Really fantastic. Medium for your toolkit. Put a little water in there like that. Get that going. Get the right consistency. Let me stir it up a little bit. The whole bottle doesn't have to be nice and soft. It's just I'm kind of reconstituting, you know, a small portion of, you know, the paint that's on top right there, and just get it to you don't want it too thin, you don't want it too thick. It's kind of the consistency of, I don't know, maybe heavy cream or something like that. All right, an old toothbrush right here. Okay, let's see. I'm going to try to get most of the stars up in this area. I don't know if I'll put it in front of some of these clouds. I mean, I could, but, I mean, I don't know, the clouds are probably something that are representative of something much closer to us, maybe in our atmosphere, you know. Doesn't have to be, though. This could be like, I don't know, nebula, gaseous formations somewhere. Who knows? Alright, so I loaded this up. I dipped it in there, and I'm just kind of brushing off some of the I don't know if this is going to focus in on me here. But, see, I don't want this just so saturated right here. Because when I do this, now sometimes it drips out. Okay? Alright. I'm going to conk it back like this and bring it back like this, so hopefully it splatters out that way. Yeah, about 8 inches or so. I do want a little bit of radius, so I got a kind of a bigger dot right there. Let's go down like this. Let me compensate for this exposure right here. The scene is okay. That's a little bit truer to the value of the piece right now. Let me see if I can kind of tilt this like that. You see what's happening right there? I mean, that's really fun stuff to do. It's like going back to I don't know. I think we did this as a kid in something before. Maybe to represent stars or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of giving another layer to everything on here. I like that I made it thin enough, apparently. I don't have a lot of control over this, but I made it thin enough to where I am getting some of those bigger blobs of paint. And if I go closer, it gives me a more focused application. It's kind of flipping back this way when I think it's going that way, but I'm kind of adding a little bit more around this part right here now. Okay, but anyway, there we have that. Okay. This is what your thumb looks like after that. I kind of wiped it off just now too, but alright, so look at this right here. Really celestial. Almost I got too much of it in some areas right here. But I can just kind of wipe that off when it dries too. See that? But look at that right there. Get it in that space. It's like a, I don't know. It looks like something Hubble would, you know. Hubble imagery. Alright, now, see, I'm just taking this right here, and watch this right here. Some of these areas got, I don't know, it looks a little bit too crazy. So I can just kind of take this. See that? Where I kind of removed it right in here? You just kind of take this and, you know, just kind of buff it out a little bit. And it will remove, oops, this is, I think I had some paint on that or something. Let me take a clean paper towel here and just kind of, you know, remove some of this here and there. Some of it, it's sprayed so fine, and too much of it looks like dust. I don't know, it could be stardust maybe, but it still is a little bit too much. Okay, so anyway, here we have that. I'm always looking forward to doing that portion of it. Okay, so we have our kind of general star patterns or whatnot, clusters and everything like that, in the form of the spray paint, that opaque watercolor. Now let's go in and do some targeted little stars, okay? So I like to go in with my gel pens, and with some gel pens in the color, out of my color scheme, I add in some targeted little marks. Meaning it's random too, but you know, I can just, you know, wherever I want one, I just add it in like so. I'm supposed to be doing some scenes for an article for Rubber Stamp Madness on the use of gel pens, but and I'll get to that, but I've been having too much fun stamping, so I need to stamp for those scenes, but I want to do a real kind of a specific application of gel pens. The bleed proof white would just kind of confuse things because I want to do a before and after, so I won't be doing kind of that splatter painting technique for that article, those article scenes. Okay, so anyways, I'm going in with this yellow, and just here and there I'm adding, you know, you can kind of do it in little clusters too. That little blotchy area right there, I can just kind of remove some of that by putting in some little dots around that. Okay, let's see if we can see some of those yellow ones in here. Okay, you see those yellow dots amongst the white? Even forgot where I added them in. Okay. What other colors were we using here? We used pink, right? So this is just kind of tying everything together with the use of kind of universal colors. So we have universal colors and textures in here. Kind of working within a color scheme. It's like, let's say someone was an interior decorator or something like that. You know how they use, let's say, the same colors on area, you know, rugs that are on the curtains, that are on the pillows or something like that on the sofa and whatnot, you know. So you run those common colors through a given space, and it starts to create kind of this visual kind of harmony between different areas. And you can kind of see it, like, you know, when someone looks over something like this, they might look at it as an overall, but then they'll look at it in little sections. You know, there's going to be some kind of visual path that your viewer is going to take when looking at something like this. So if you have certain things, textural forms, colors, and whatnot running through these different areas, you don't have to have a big area of it, but it'll just kind of create a general harmony between things. Alright, here's white. Okay, now we did get some whites, you know, with the bleed proof white and whatnot, but this will be a much more specific application of it right here. I'm generally using this to do some kind of larger dots, larger stars in here. Okay, let's take a look at this. Not exactly engaging, riveting video viewing. I know someone putting like 100 dots down with a pen, but I don't know, that's the process right there. It should be a time lapse, really. Okay, so, alright. Now this is one of the things I haven't been doing lately too, but it occurred to me I think I'll want to do it on here. Let's take this cosmetic sponge right here, or not sponge, but cosmetic brush. Some of these, I don't like some of this texture. It's too much, like right out here. Okay, and I can kind of remove some of it, but let's just go over and maybe tint some of these dots. Okay. I don't know if they'll look gray. They might look a little bit more gray, but this is what I'm doing right here. I'm just kind of tapping this into my pad, okay? And now see, this is going to be kind of an added, a little light dabbing kind of motion like this. All right, so I'm not wiping with the, the sponge texture. I mean, I could sponge this on too, I guess. Like this. But sometimes with a sponge tip, it kind of removes the things a little bit more, where these are little brush hairs, where they won't remove the dot. It'll just kind of, it just kind of stains them a little bit. See that right there? Where, yeah. See where these ones are a little bit darker now than these ones? Whereas over here, it almost, like that sponge kind of almost removed those little dots down there. I guess because the sponge holds much more moisture. Okay. So you can get kind of a range of values within your, little splatter, applied stars right around here. If you want a little bit more kind of variation, or if it just looks too busy in some areas, then just kind of go in and make some, a little bit less visible by darkening them. Maybe making them darker, kind of pushes them back in the background a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know. Alright, boy, that looks insane. There's so much texture going on in here. Okay, we're ready for our imagery. Oh, this is what I almost did wrong yesterday. Let's do a couple of these stars first with the pigment ink, white pigment ink. Okay. I'm going to make some of these stars look like, appear as though they're kind of glowing a little bit more. Especially some of these larger white gel pen applications, okay? So what I do is, with a very dry brushing technique here, is I'll go back in and just put a little bit over some of these stars right here. Okay, see that? So it kind of makes them look like they're glowing a touch. Alright. Okay, I had to compensate again. The scene got a little bit darker. So a little kind of glowing star there. It's really fun to do. These little additions like that. It's kind of a textural change, that's going on in here. You can put some, ooh, that's way too much on those clouds right down there to kind of make them look a little bit softer. So what I do is just kind of dab it off like so. Okay, so I guess that's about right. See those little stars in there? Some of them are kind of glowing. Doesn't that really stand out now? Just a couple of little taps of very dry white pigment ink like that. Tapped over that. See this area out here? Let me just bring out one of these stars, okay? I'm just going to put a couple little taps. I'm barely touching the paper, and also my Q-tip's a little bit, you know, dry. But look at that star out there now. See, isn't that one kind of glowing? It really stands out from the others around it, right? And it's not super bright or anything like that, but it just stands out. Let me do a couple more of these. I just took a look here and I saw a couple more opportunities. Something like that. Okay. That is that. It's time to pull out the VersaFine Black. Okay, this seems going out. Let me switch this blotter paper around. Should be like go like that. Alright, it's time for the imagery in here. Okay. Boy, really have to pull out. Okay. Somewhere in here is going to be my vanishing point, okay? In the way that I apply my images, okay? On this one, I'm not going to do this perimeter thing going all the way around here. I'm going to be using some of my trees, okay? Now, I want all these trees to roughly be focusing in on one of these stars up here. Or it could be anything, you know, one of these points up here. But we want this vanishing point to be the same for all of these images that I end up using in here, okay? I'll probably, maybe I'll go for this one right here, or this one. I don't know, we can kind of do it a little bit off-center. Or do I want to go for it centered? This one's not real centered, but let's just say there's a little bit of a star right there. Maybe we can go for that one. This one's brighter, though. Yeah, okay, I'll just go for that one right there. So I'm going to try to, I'm not going to bring like a ruler in here or anything like that, but I'm just going to aim roughly like that tip, you know, wherever I put this, that tip will be kind of pointed towards that. Okay, now that'll be with any tree image that I use in here. So let's just start off with that. I'll use this one, and I'll use some of my kind of my leafless pine imagery. But I'll start with the larger images first. This one's a little bit of a thicker one, so it's easier to work thin around thick than to work thick around thin or something. If that makes sense. Okay, so I won't use this whole thing in here, okay, because, you know, we have the sky in here, so. Alright, so there's that tree. And I'm just kind of aiming it towards that. VersaFine is a pigment ink, so this is going to remain kind of moist for a little while, so I'm going to have to really be careful that I don't drag my hand across the impressions that I'm making, which I do sometimes because I'm not too careful, I guess. Okay, so see how that's kind of pointed right towards that star? If I come over here, it's going to be at a little bit of a different angle, right? It's like a clock hand or something like that working around. And it doesn't have to be exact. Okay, that was just, you know, I barely stamped. That one was mostly stamping off right there. I'll probably need a VersaFine re-inker before too long. I just started using this, like, a lot fairly recently. I always, you know, used like a Marvy Black or something like that before. But then I did this a comparison between the VersaFine and the Marby Black, and I was shocked. The VersaFine made the Marby Black look like a, I don't know, like a 90% or something like that, where I thought it was more closer to 100% black. These trees right here, it's starting to kind of, you know, we're starting to get kind of the perspective a little bit. Okay, coming out like that. When you do this kind of, when you do this angled kind of perspective, it gives the illusion that we are kind of lying on our back, looking at the stars or something like that, or you know, you're looking through the, you know, you're looking at it from a certain vantage point. You're looking upwards, towards it. Dare I put another one right there? I think I will. I wasn't quite sure how high I was going to go with this. Okay. I mean, we could go, you know, all the way around like this. I don't think I want to do that, though. I don't know, though. That one way up there looks pretty good. That might look okay. I'm going more and more. This is what I talked about, how I don't exactly know how these are going to come out a lot of times until the end result. It's not a complete mystery, but I can't say that I've seen, you know, like this particular composition before. Not from me. So it's kind of surprising me. I usually don't go up this high around the edge. I want it fairly high with a pretty recent scene, but can you see that right there? Here. This is what this is looking like right now. Does this look really dimensional now? It really pushes that space area back quite a ways, doesn't it? Okay, so that was the spruce tree, large, and this is the pine. Let me see if there's any kind of opportunities for this in here too. I always see these kind of different types of pine trees where I go hiking. If it's up at elevation, you see, I forget, I used to know them, ponderosa pines and sequoias interspersed with other types. Okay, this one right here I'm really going to have to aim carefully. That one I was a little bit crooked, but who cares? Okay. Kind of like this, maybe. It's kind of, all these different trees are just kind of reiterating that vanishing point idea. Something like that. I won't use this one too much. I really love this pine, but I need to go for a little bit more of a bolder image for this this piece. Otherwise it's just not going to show up because it's just so dark on the perimeter down there. Okay, so this is the leafless pine. This is a smaller version. Yeah, it's roughly about 4 inches tall or something like that. Okay. Oops. I just ran my thumb into that spruce tree underneath there. I didn't smear it though. Okay, you can see how that kind of bare one looks right there. Okay, you've got more than you think you need. I thought I'd just be using a smaller piece, but I thought, let's go a little bit more. Look at that one. I thought that one was really effective. Right there. Okay. There's the tip of it. I think I have to kind of reassure. This looks like the area around here with a lot of dead pine trees, and there was a lot of wildfires and years before, well, not too many years before, bark beetle infestations, and from all the drought, the trees just couldn't fight off some of the those beetles where they normally could, because the trees didn't have enough sap to fight it off with, which they normally did. Okay, so that was that right there. Look at those. That kind of glow looks pretty cool underneath there now, I think. See those trees? Okay, we need something really tall right here, don't we? And I have just the thing in the form of the big brother, or mother, or whatever, father of this smaller one right here, okay? This one has designed to be of a much larger space. If you had if you only had like the larger one or whatnot, you can always use this portion of it to make a smaller one too. Okay, so much taller. Let's use the full. Let's be bold with it. And use maybe the full length of it. Okay, like something like this. That is really bold. It's going like a full, I don't know, 2.5 inches taller than the tree next to it. I think it could use it though. The scene in general. You can use kind of a change of scale. Maybe this tree is closer to us, so it just makes it look, much taller too. But the other ones are farther away. Okay, there we go. And it goes up much higher there. Okay. let's get one more. Alright, let's take a look and see what we have here. Alright. See that top, that was our star here, where everything's kind of roughly pointed towards it. I was off on some of these, but just in general, it keeps the kind of the perspective on there. And it gives us it tells us of our vantage point within the given scene and whatnot. And I don't know, don't they anchor down kind of the composition really nicely? Look at those stars right behind there. See, as crazy as some of those textures got, with all that Dr. Martin's bleed proof white, when you put something in front of it now, these trees aren't covering, you know, this area up right here, but it puts something much closer to us, so it pushes everything back there in visual space, okay? And just as the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white pushed the color back, this is one of those things why this type of scene, in terms of the precariousness of it goes, it's really easy to do. I mean, I had that big blotch of, you know, black right there. I had the, you know, the top of this, you know, my cap, you know, laid down there, and we saw the outline of it down there. We just laid down all kinds of different tones around that. I mean, even that really hot pink glow right there. It really stands out right there, but I put a tree in front of it, so it pushed it back into the distance. From a photography perspective, you know, that would be, you know, 50 feet away or something like that. And then that back area would be infinity or something of that sort. So every time we do something like this, we push the other layers back further, and that could be said for the layering of different colors. You put one color down. I mean, remember how all that yellow, that was this yellow underneath all this before, right, when it started off. But, you know, it doesn't really matter what that looks like too much. I mean, if you want to retain some lighter areas like the white of the paper, then you can't cover it up with yellow. But that being said, no matter what went on with something like this, or what went on with some of that different imagery underneath all this, it really doesn't matter too much, does it? You know, I mean, by the time you bring in all these colors over the top of it, you bring in all that paint texture over the top of it, and we bring in some additional images over the top of it, gel pen marks, pigment ink, you know, glowing little stars and whatnot. But that being said, we're not covering up everything. See in here? You can see the shape of, you know, our initial impressions with the Milky Way, can't we? You know, can you see that in here now? It's all still there. And that glowing yellow down there, underneath there, all of it, it's still showing through, and it's still affecting the overall, giving us that really deep, saturated tone. Now, as I talk here, see that yellow's underneath right there, and we can see the clouds underneath there, and that texture and whatnot. It's up here as well. You can see a little texture in here. See that cloud right there? Even though we've covered it up with so many different colors, it's transparent colors, so all those colors underneath and the stamped impressions still read. So it all adds up to kind of a deeper space, but from a process standpoint, it really makes it, I wouldn't say foolproof or something like that, you know, but it practically is. You saw me kind of just dabbing, you know, smashing that color down at a couple times just to make a point that it really doesn't matter what you do. you know, with something. I don't want to go with the VersaFine and take that, you know, take a pad and just go like this, you know, with that black around here. But with those other colors, you know, it's not a precarious exercise laying all those different colors down. It makes it easier because you have so much color laid down to just kind of really build it up and whatnot. And then when you get into your final impressions like that, it just kind of really brings everything out. And I don't know. I think it makes it really dramatic and deep in terms of the space in there. All right, so when I said final images, I think I will go with a couple little things. I want this to kind of be like a little mini series of 3 pieces. I want to do a quick scene too, my next one too, but as far as my main scenes go, it's had something to do with flight because I've had some birds kind of in the air. And these ones, let's go with the eagle again. It's a fairly large one right here, and I can get pretty dramatic with it. Okay. And we'll go with the VersaFine again. And this is the point where I don't want to accidentally drop my stamp or something like that, or go for a double impression or something like that, right? Okay, so let's put this one right here, maybe. I've already used up my Night Flight title. Could be Night Flight 2. I don't know. That's kind of boring, though. Star Soaring. It's kind of a fusion of my a couple titles. I like that one, maybe. Okay, let's go for that eagle's kind of lonely, so let me go with its companion one, Eagle Soaring. But let's go with the smaller one so it kind of goes back in perspective a little bit. I might even use Flock, I'm not sure. We'll see how this goes. Okay, this one's a smaller one. I'll put this one higher up here. That. This is what I always tell people. If you're not certain if you want to use another image, okay? Now, if you're using an unmounted version, maybe it's kind of harder to tell. And this one's a mounted version, of course, but you can just kind of put it right in front. Or stamp it on, you know, transparency or something like that. And just going to put it in front. I think that looks pretty good, but I might not want all of the birds in this one. Okay, maybe a couple of them, like that. So I'll just ink it up like so, and just with a paper towel, I just wipe off these ones around it. If they still stamp out a little bit, they'll just be kind of in a gray, you know. Maybe they represent some birds farther away, I don't know. Okay, I'm kind of going like that. I'm kind of going up there towards that star, kind of our vanishing point star. Maybe in this case, it's kind of the destination star, something like, okay, very subtle. You can barely see it right there. Like this. Okay, so they're right there. Okay, so it kind of creates this kind of a swooping kind of thing of going like that up to that star right there. It's kind of a vanishing point star, so I don't know. Maybe they could have been a little bit bigger. But that being said, I think that is enough for this piece right here. It took me on a nice little journey. I hope if you've watched this and kind of sat through this big piece, I hope it didn't bore you too much. You can always use the toggle switch on all of these, luckily on YouTube. And anyway, what was the title of it again? Star Soaring? Actually, I don't know if I like that. I'll figure it out. But anyways, Going back to the beginning, all right? The more ink you use, the easier it is to kind of spread things out, and the deeper and more saturated the end result can look. Remember to overlap your imagery, you know, about a 1/4 inch to even a full inch or something like that. And re-ink in between impressions, you know, so that you get a nice strong impression. You want those star imageries in something like this to be fairly dark. You can even stamp in black if you want to. I thought by stamping my sky imagery in a color scheme, in a color out of the color scheme that I'm going to be going in, you kind of give it a little bit of a head start with something to relate to within the piece. So if the stars are kind of giving off the color of this color scheme, then why not stamp them in something out of that color scheme? That's my theory, at least, and what I do in practice. And again, just start with your lightest tones and work darker. And I really recommend, when you're going with any type of color scheme, in this type of process where you're layering one color over the top of another one, to just pull the stamps out and to lay them out right in front of you. I'm starting to put away my little pieces right here as I'm talking. And really just use a lot of those colors. And don't be afraid. Now this is starting to dry off, and it's starting to look a little bit dull for me, but when I spray it, it'll kind of revive things. But sometimes if I think, it's not quite as saturated as I thought it was, don't be afraid to just go back in with some lighter color that you used before and just apply it right over the top of the darker ones, and maybe it'll bring out the intensity and vibrancy of those colors again. But spray sealing this will bring out extra intensity, depth, and value of the colors that are used in here. Okay, and then, I don't know, like I said, inexpensive, well, if you're international or whatnot, I looked online for people trying to find this in some areas, and it can get a little bit pricey, but one bottle does, you know, take you a pretty long ways, you know, in acquiring this. If you're in a country that has, it's hard to find certain types of crafting supplies, sometimes it's easier to find like something like Bleed Proof White in, from like a place that carries calligraphy supplies. Okay, they typically have this, unless they're sold out or something like that. So I was able to find, look up like calligraphy, whatever, you know, for whatever country, and to find a store that does carry it, because that's a really popular medium with that crowd. Okay, so anyways, have fun with your things. This would look really great with some additional kind of gold pen, gel pen. My gold pen is kind of not working great here, but kind of a warm tone saying, here's a Zig Painty. Haven't used this for years, but this would be a perfect pen to use on here. This, you know, this yellow, orangish bronze would be good in here. If you have a glitter pen too, that would be really fantastic for some additional stars up here. Try some of that. Let me see what this Zig's. Oh my gosh, this Zig. Thank heavens for the Zig pen. If you've ever had one of these, my gosh, I've had this for like 10 years, and I don't know, it just keeps working. But this is one of those things, you can't see what I'm putting down here because it looks exactly the same as kind of that background hue in there, okay, because the gold and the background colors are about the same. But what this does is, when you know, with any kind of metallic pen, when you hold it up to a certain angle in the light, it's very reflective. Uh-oh. I changed my mind. This Zig's starting to fall apart on me, but it was working. Maybe I can just push it back in there. And it's starting to fall out. Okay. I'll just be very careful here. This pen is so old. I mean, my son's used it when he was probably, I don't know, 5 years old or something like that too. Oops, that really fell out of there. Let me go back in and do a little repair work here. I'll just buff that right out like that. No problem. Okay, but let me see if I can see some of that Zig. Yeah. So right there, some of those are little metallic marks. I didn't shake it up very much either, but I don't know, can you see that down there? Or is that the yellow? I can't even see it. Okay, you know, if you're using a decent, you know, metallic gel pen, it'll stand out much more. Okay, that big smear there shows up, but you know what I mean? It's not really any big deal because it kind of just blends in like that. But if you know, some of those metallic marks kind of capture the light, it really kind of shines back at you and gives your viewer that extra little, or recipient of your card, that extra little touch, you know, that rewards them for their further inspection of your fantastic celestial piece. Or whatever you're going to call it. Okay, so my final piece, not really in a triptych, because I've done this one in a different scale. But anyways, what a fun type of process right here. I had to do this. Someone put this kind of reference photo up of, you know, your dark foreground imagery and celestial background, and that is right up my alley in terms of kind of my aesthetics and stuff that I really enjoy doing. Which I don't do too often, but I really have fun doing that. Sky imagery and deep space imagery, nebula, galaxies and whatnot, and I don't know, kind of evocative types of color schemes and whatnot that you can all do in those kind of deep space types of settings. You can use any kind of color scheme you want. Anything goes, you know, for sure. Anything goes really in any scene you do, but especially with deep space imagery, I would, you know, say. So anyways, thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, and if it didn't put you to sleep too much, you know, maybe like, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions, just drop us a note in the comments section.